And everybody that's come in, welcome, by the way, to Benny's Whiskey Wednesday, which today is Benny's Tequila Tuesday, which next week and for the subsequent 3 weeks will be Benny's Mezcal Monday. As you can see, when we do our live streams, we like to get our outtakes out of the way first. And they're live outtakes. These weren't recorded. This is really us just talking to each other while we have 25 people streaming into the room. So it's my pleasure to introduce our guests for what is going to be a multi-week conversation about all things agave, and not just what we're drinking, but how that actually gets into the bottle and gets into our hands as consumers. I'm Brett Pontani. I'm the specialty spirits buyer for Benny's Beverage Depot. Along with me, a member of the Whiskey Hotline, Pat Brophy, who is a spirit specialist and our director of education. Also with us, our good friend Monique Houston, who is the National Spirits Director for Winebow Import Company. Our friend Lou Bank, who is the founder of Sacred Agave, which is a not-for-profit having to do with all things ethics and agave. Our friend Michael Rubel, who is the owner and manager of Asterio, which is a fantastic Central South American and agave-based bar based in the Logan Square neighborhood in Chicago. And our most special guest, our dear friend David Suro, who is the owner and founder of Tequila Restaurant in Philadelphia, native of Guadalajara, and also the owner of Siembra Imports, which brings in Casquein Tequila, Siembra Azul, Siembra Valles, and the Mizonte products and the Pajarote liqueurs from Mexico, and is also, he's got 3 business cards, not just one, is also the leader of a couple of different sustainability movements around environmentally responsible practices in Mexico, as well as human resource responsible practices in Mexico, as well as the bat-friendly natural pollination project in Mexico. So, all right. So,
did you do that from notes, Brett, or was that just the top of your head?
No, it's the, see, this is, I don't have, I always joke, when I do these things, I actually don't ever have anything written down. I don't have a formal presentation. We need a lot of questions because all I do is have a series of tangents, and that's just one of my tangents. And so
Brett dangerously has a photographic memory, and he can just recall anything. So, you know,
remember that. That's
a good intro.
Brad, that I had to print business cards because I don't have any business cards anymore.
That's right. Well, you need a 3-sided business, my friend. Just you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, you know, it's lots of fun every day. You know, when we're not dealing with beans and rice, we're dealing with agaves and bats or jimadores, or you know, it's always something fun to do. Yeah.
So the reason why, for those folks who it's probably not clear, this really started as an idea amongst us, mostly with on a trip that we made in January with Monique and Michael, and David was our host. Lou came in shortly after that because of his interest. Pat came in because of his interest to just discuss what's going on with agave, because I think that what everybody knows that agave, especially mezcal, recently has exploded. Tequila as well in the last 4 or 5 years, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. But I think that the lens by which everybody has viewed this explosion has been through very large brands that have been around a long time. We're familiar with the Cuervos, the Sauzas, the Herraduras of the world, and brands that are relative newcomers, things like Casa Noble and Casamigos and Patron, and things that have sprung up in the last 10 or 15 years in popular consciousness. And so we wanted to do a little bit of a deeper dive, because I don't think that a lot of people understand what tequila is and what agave is and everything that goes into it, because I think that our understanding is more pop culture and more advertising, and a little bit less what this incredibly important native produced indigenous spirit is. And so that's why we've all kind of gotten together, and we're going to have a rotating series of guests over the next 4 weeks to discuss this, and to kick it off, just to make sure everybody knows what everybody's starting point is. I guess we're going to talk about first, what is tequila? And maybe at its basic, because David is by far the longest in, and that's not a reflection of age, my friend. It's just a reflection of a lifelong spent a lifetime spent in the agave business. So in general, what is tequila?
Great. That's a very interesting question, depending on which angle you want to see it. You know, there is a definition of tequila, that technical definition that is part of the norm of the regulations that govern the category. And I can read that definition for you, which I think is very important. And it's interesting to observe each line of this definition. It's a regional alcoholic beverage obtained by distillation and rectification of most directly prepared from grist of ripe agave tequilana Weber. I think it would be fun just to stop there and analyze just that paragraph. So, you know, tequila is a spirit that it has to be double distilled, minimum of double distillation. Yeah, you know, when we are producing tequila, we cannot even call tequila after the first distillation. It's an ordinary spirit. It became tequila into the second distillation. And it has to be used agave tequilana Weber, blue variety, which is one of the most interesting topics of tequila, in my opinion, because one of the main differences between tequila and mezcal is the source of the sugars. In the case of tequila, we are allowed to use only one varietal of agave, which is the tequilana Weber. In the case of mezcal, we are allowed to use literally hundreds of different varietals of agaves. So that's the very first question that I always have to the category. Why only one species of agave? When we are in the epicenter of biodiversity in the world of agave, you know, there is no other place in the world that has more biodiversity on agaves than Mexico. And Jalisco, and the area where the denomination of tequila is one of the most prolific after Oaxaca. You know, Oaxaca is the most prolific region in Mexico when it comes to biodiversity. But Jalisco has many agaves. They are endemic from the region where tequila is produced, but we as an industry decide to choose only one, creating a monocultive, therefore creating a real ecological challenges in the area of the denomination of origin. So far we have that, right? It's a double distilled spirit, and also has to be produced by only one species of agave in the case of the 100% agave tequila. But the other big challenge for me to understand the category. And
Lou, you have a question.
I do. I'm sorry, David. I need to. Okay, go ahead.
I'm preparing this for you, Lou, because
Okay.
I know you're going to probably jump in, and I really want you to get your opinion, which is very interesting. We have two categories of tequila. We have a 100% agave tequila. Oh, I listen to myself. I start to talk about mixtos, and then the something.
The computers just explode. Smoke's coming out of our ears when you mention mixto tequila. I mean,
so the second category in the definition of tequila is mixto tequila, which in legal terms, in a definition of tequila, technically speaking, you don't call it mixto, you just call it tequila. Which is also troubling for me. But the mixtos can be produced from any other sugar source, no matter what it is. It can be corn, it can be any grain, any crappy stuff, you know. But we're not allowed to bring other species of agave into the production of which is, you know, I think we defeat the purpose to have a denomination of origin of tequila. Lou, please go ahead.
You know, it's funny because you like, I'm going to throw you a curveball, David. You're expecting me to ask questions about the mixto, but I want to go back to the very first thing you said, where you said that it has to be distilled at least twice, because somehow this has gone over my head all these years. I didn't realize that that was one of the requirements. And so the basis of my question is actually to get to more of a central 101 definition of tequila. So if it's distilled twice, can it go through a column still that has two plates? And that's like the first two-part question. So that's the first part of the question. But the second part is, like, is there a definition of any other spirit where that is also a requirement, where you're talking about like bourbons or scotches? Do they have definitions like that where it says it has to be a minimum or a maximum number of distillations? And I guess Whiskey Hotline people might want to answer that part too.
Single malt Scotch for
yes.
sure must be single malt Scotch must be at least distilled twice in a copper pot. Still, it has to be copper, has to be a pot. Very few are distilled 3 times.
Irish whiskey also.
Standard.
Irish whiskey also has to be.
Irish whiskey has to be, yes, distilled at least twice.
What about cognac or Armagnac?
Cognac also has to be distilled twice in copper pots.
So what is the magic of the twice that, like, when you're talking about, so every category that you guys have just mentioned, right? Now, so we're talking about tequila and cognac. These are all, and scotch, these are all categories of spirits that to me are considered some of the best artisanal spirits in the world.
You know, I think it's Lou, it's a good, and I get where you're going. And David can comment on this because I think there's historical perspective. Part of the reason why you would want to double distill is the first stills that everybody would have started distilling on, whether it is a Philippine still, which would be common in Mexico, that style, or at least the oldest, what would have been used in Mesoamerica, pot stills used in Europe, which would have been closer, alembic style stills, which would have come from Northern Africa and flown into, is the reason why you distill twice for the higher quality spirits, and Mesoamerica would have been discovered purely as a matter of quality control. The first distillation is a concentration of alcohol, right? Mm-hmm. The first distillation is generally not enough to concentrate the alcohol and concentrate the flavors. There are still some impurities if you run it through once. It's the second distillation that eliminates or allows you the ability to eliminate a great deal of impurities. So as different spirits rise to a world-class level, the double distillation is generally an further elimination of flaws.
You know, I don't want to take us too far away from tequila because this is what it's about, but it's fascinating to me. You talk about the impurities, right? You're leaving impurities in single distillation, and yet we go crazy for our beers and our wines, which haven't been distilled at all, and therefore all those impurities are still in there. Like, where is that line, right?
Well,
am I taking us too far away from the central?
Well, no. Well, maybe a little bit too far. But I guess
I'm going to say yes, but continue.
From a chemical standpoint, the issue is they're all kind of there, but in much lower levels with lower alcohol. And part of the concentration of concentrating alcohol is also concentrating the impurities. So theoretically, the first wave of concentration, you're concentrating flavors, but you're also concentrating a number of impurities. The second distillation narrows in on the flavor and the goodness and eliminates the impurities, because the worst ones are usually at the very beginning and at the very end. And you take the middle. And that's the whole point of the second distillation.
Okay, I'll rest.
I'd like to ask David a question if I could.
Yes.
So David, when exactly does tequila decide that Tequiliana Weber needs to be the main, well, not just main, well, actually, before we even get to like the legally, okay, it has to be Agave Azul, when did it start to become, okay, we're going to use Tequiliana Weber and that alone in tequila? When does that start to happen?
That was, there being some regulations that you can go back to the 1940s that they start to get formed to what we know today as the NOM 006. But when the denomination of origin finally obtained their recognition, the world recognition, when we have the NOM of tequila in 1995, I believe that was when it was, you have to use Tequilana Weber. There is no way to go around. And the only reason, I think we had that conversation in Morelia when we were sitting there waiting for the group. It's economical reasons. It's the Agave Tequilana Weber, out of all the varietals of agaves to grow in Mexico, is the agave to take the shorter period of time to reach maturity, which means you don't have to use the land for your agaves for, in the case of some of the agaves that grow in Oaxaca or Michoacan, you have to wait 15, 20, 30, 40 years for the maturity of the agaves. Tequilana Weber, its cycle is very short compared with another agaves. It's also the agave that has the highest sugar yield. So you need less kilogram of agave to make more liters of alcohol, So it makes a lot of sense from an economical perspective. Also, out of all the agaves, it's the agave to give us more offshoots, so you can reproduce more agaves from one plant. So it was based on that. The industry decided to self-regulate and to avoid other great agaves to grow also within the territory of the denomination of origin, and say that's the one that is going to be, but creating a monocultive and with all the consequences that is being had for the last 30, 40 years.
It's not unique. It's not unique as an industry that finds that kind of efficiencies drive the growth of the industry, especially as the industry grows. You have to expect that the agronomical efficiencies and growth is just what's going to have to drive it in order for it to get as big as it is today.
And we are paying the consequences of that. It's in one hand, yes, economically makes a lot of sense. It's better if you see from a spreadsheet perspective, but if you see from the ecological impact and where the agave tequilana is right now, probably was not a good decision. I remember sitting in the Highlands region with an old jimador, a very old man that is physically not capable to perform as a jimador, but he was there that day directing the young jimadores, teaching the jimadores, passing the wisdom to the young guys. And I asked him, I said, 30 years ago, when I first came to the Highlands region, I remember, you guys were harvesting piñas. They were, the smallest ones, they were up 90 kilos, 300 pounds. And where are those piñas? And he's like, well, about 20 years ago, when we intensified the use of agrochemicals, the soil, the motherland, the land is being, telling us that this is not the right direction. And right now, the agaves, if you go to the Highlands where we have the biggest agaves average in the denomination of origin, if you harvest an agave that is 45 kilos, you are everybody stop and look at that piña because it's so unusual. So, the agave is being evolving as we put in more and more pressure into the soil and the plant himself. That I don't think it was a good business decision, because those big agaves, they used to give us a lot more sugar yield. They were bigger plants for the same amount of time they were used on the land. So there were wise decisions? No. If we talk in terms of agave, you have to understand that if you talk in terms of grapes or grains, there are 1 year cycles where you observe the impact, the changes. Here you have to be extremely patient, because whatever you're doing today, the repercussions in 3 generations of agave equals almost 30 years. So this is a very delicate game and balance that we have to have in these plants. They are very generous. They have the ability to take care of themselves. There is no irrigation. You plant them and you basically kiss them and wish them good luck. And if they are healthy, they can take care of themselves for the entire cycle of life.
So David, another one of the key words that you brought up in the definition of tequila was the word ripe. And So that brings up an interesting point. At one point in time, ripe was after X number of years, or a Brix, you know, a sugar content that was
Ripe
fermentable.
was ripe, you know.
And now big companies and other people have weighed in, and now that is not necessarily the case. So where it might have been 10 years, 7 years for a plant to come out of the ground, you know, unlike whiskey or grapes, like you said, where we can actually generate something from them annually, now has the law changed, or what has changed that now they can actually take the plants out younger?
That's a great observation, Monique, because it is. That key word was changed in the regulations. Again, the self-regulated industry. We got to remember that we became extremely efficient in the process. The use of technology that allow us to cook faster, but also to extract almost 99% of the sugars from the plant is here. And when you have such a high level of efficiency, even if you don't harvest agaves, they are necessarily mature, as the regulations used to be very strict about it, you can still obtain enough sugars to make it profitable. So in 2005, they were start in a review of the norm. They start to promote the erase of that word, mature. Well, in 2012, they were successful. The big industry obtained the recognition to erase the word ripe agave heads. And that opened a Pandora box, because now we have a big industry that use very efficient diffusers. And I tell you in a second what a diffuser is, but the level of efficiency in these machines, you know, and when you put it in a balance, is what it will be more profitable for me to invest 2 more years or 3 more years on the use of the land, or to harvest this young agave, because now it's legal to harvest the agave even if I don't reach maturity. The regulations used to force me, not anymore, and be able to extract with this highly efficient piece of equipment that I use in my process, and being able to take enough sugars to balance my sheets.
So it's like the veal of tequila.
I'm sorry?
It's like the veal of tequila?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Well, if the tequila, if the veal had been given steroids and
tasted like crap.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, veal is not the analogy. Veal is delicious.
Yeah.
Diffused tequila is
So David, just a question, just real to narrow that in. So the gnome that you were talking about in 1995, where they really started to codify, and they identified Weber agave. How much of that was pressure within the industry, pressure within Mexico, pressure from the market, specifically export market? What drove that decision, and then what drove the decision in 2012 that was a lead up to 2000?
1995, you have to understand, if you put in a historical context and the evolution of the industry, even if we have already big industry already investing in tequila, but the market was not consuming, not even close what it consumes today. And back in 1995, we have only no, it was not even a diffuser installed in the industry. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, there was only one diffuser installed in the industry. That was just, you know, from the agro business. You know, it was easier to bring. It was more profitable to bring other sugars that don't take, you know, that much, and we were able to use an agave that is endemic from the region, and it's going to give us a lot more sugars. It's more yield in that plant. You don't want to compete against these beautiful ixteros or cimarrones to grow in Jalisco, and you still find them in agave Tequilana Weber plantations. You see, sometimes these agaves, they don't even pass by the inspectors of the CRT because they don't even know the difference between the species of agaves. But they are agaves, they have more complexity, in my opinion. the agaves, they have a lot more to offer, organoleptically speaking, okay? But they not as profitable from a sugar yield perspective, and they take longer to develop. So the industry took, just lock the agave that it makes more sense in the business from a business perspective. Yeah.
Michael,
Well,
do you ever have people come in and ask, I mean, because you're back across the bar again, thank God, even during all of this, the Estereo's got all the safety measures in place. Do you still have people that come in and will ask for like a mixto tequila?
No, I think that for I don't know, about 10 years ago, the misto thing largely disappeared. But what's funny is like to tack on to some things that David is saying, and mistos were cheap for a lot of reasons. Not only was it 49% like aguardiente or corn or whatever, but you could also bottle in the United States.
That's a big one.
So this stepped on all sorts of parts of the gnome, right? This is like unbelievable. This is, if you're going to have a deal about tequila and now it can be bottled somewhere else, and now half of the product is not actually agave, what is the DO doing for it? But Cuervo and Sauce continue to sort of push and push and push for that. But Patron and Don Julio and those more premium brands, they're maybe not the best brands today, but they shifted the market in a huge way, and I think brought people toward 100% agave. This happened at the same time, paradoxically, that diffuser technology took hold in the 90s when the price of agave was so high. So as the public began to think, oh, okay, so the sign of quality is 100% Tequiliana Weber, 100% Agave Azul, 100% agave, that's what great tequila is about. The industry found a new way to cheat, and that was to not even cook the agave, smash them first, then use a diffuser, which is essentially like a crazy power wash with really hot water, sometimes sulfuric acid. Then you take that and because you're at the end of the day, right, you're just trying to get inulin out of there, trying to get a raw material you can turn into sugar, and a diffuser is the most efficient way to do that. Then you take that mess and you put it into an autoclave, which some people use to cook the agave. Here, we're taking post-diffuser stuff, we're putting it in the autoclave, and what we're left with probably has no agave character at all, and so we're gonna have to add a little artificial flavor and a little bit of this or that. And then we're gonna ferment it with commercial yeast, and really quick, hopefully 36 hours or so, and distill it twice in a stainless steel still. So the playing field changed. Right when everyone thought 100% agave was what it was all about, the diffuser in a traditional house like Herradura switched to diffuser in the 90s. Some of their favorite products might be using agaves that aren't 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, that don't have ripe sugars, that are 3 years old, 4 years old, and they're just smashed and then tossed into hot water and sulfuric acid. If that's what you're doing and you're using artificial flavor, do you really need a ripe agave? Does it really matter?
Well, I mean, you've kind of created, it's also at the same time, vodka is still one of the biggest selling spirits in the world. So there are people who simply want a basically flavorless, tasteless spirit. I remember back in the day, I owned a bar, and when people would come in and ask for Patron, I would, if we were out of it or something like that, I wouldn't go to another tequila. I wouldn't look to another very flavorful, properly produced, great tequila. And I'm not trying to like poop on Patron, but I would recommend a vodka. If we were out of Patron, I wouldn't go to tequila. I would go to vodka immediately.
That's an interesting point, and I think it's a vital point because different people have different palates, and I don't think there's anything wrong with somebody who likes something that's processed in a way that takes out a lot of the flavor. It's not what I like. It's not what I don't think any of us particularly like. But if it's what someone likes, it's what they like. And I think it's because it's so easy to drink something that is not complex. It's smooth. and that's great. And I think there are ways, if you're enjoying it, I think there are ways to move. And I think this is the pertinent question of these sessions, right? Is you're enjoying drinking something, and how do you move to that next thing? And it's like in my playbook, that means going to something a little bit more complex, right?
Right.
You know, I agree. I agree 100% of that. But my observation, and you know, I admit the existence of mixtos tequilas. There are, as you say, there's people who really don't care about it, and I don't think we should misuse or use the land to bring a spirit that it has to weigh some agaves on those pallets, you know. And I don't have a problem with the existence of mixtos. I have a problem to add the word tequila to those mixtos. You can make whatever you want, but just, I don't think it should be called tequila, you know, because it is a denomination of origin. A denomination of origins, they were created to protect, to promote social economical development in the areas they are protected. And as Michael's bring probably one of the most sensitive points of the tequila industry, that since 2007, the US-Mexico NAFTA deal allowed the bottling companies in the United States, they, by the way, bottle more liters of tequila than Mexico. And this is a denomination of origin. And since 2007, the Regulatory Council of Tequila, which is the organization that is in charge to verify and supervise that tequila complies with its regulations, the inspectors, since 2007, they're not allowed to inspect the bottling companies in the United States. That is a big deal for me.
And that's for any tequila that's just labeled tequila. If it's labeled 100% agave,
100% has to be bottled in origin.
It has to be bottled at the distillery.
And that's so. If you're gonna bottle it abroad, and if you're gonna use other sugars, God bless you, good luck, but don't call it tequila. You know.
That's one of the most important things, because we're kind of at like a halfway point, is that we have people joining us that are tequila lovers, that are mezcal lovers, but we also, typically, this is the Whiskey Hotline team here. So we also have people that are whiskey drinkers, that are cognac drinkers. And so there's a couple touch points that we've hit on, which are that if this is a spirit that you're intrigued by, if you like flavor, if you like complexity, there's a few key things on every bottle that you need to look for. And the second that you see 100% Weber agave, you know that it's not mixto, it doesn't have the sugars or whatever the other things are blended into it, that it's been bottled in Mexico under the CRT guidance. And so there's some really, really important things there.
but it could still be diffuser, as Michael was saying, correct?
Yes.
So how do you tell the difference? How do you go to that next step? If like it feels to me like if you're drinking a mixto, and I don't know any mixtos off the top of my head, but if you're drinking a mixto and you want to go to
Cuervo Gold.
Okay, so Cuervo Gold. So I go from Cuervo Gold to drinking something that says 100% Blue Weber agave, but it's been through a diffuser. Is there any way I can tell the difference?
Of course, yes. You know, but I think, and this is the beauty, not just of tequila or mezcal, any spirit. And when you start to dig into a category that you like it, that you enjoy it, you know, that's one of the things that tequila, you know, and mezcal offers to you. I mean, it's such a spirits, they have so much to offer to palate, so much to offer in history, so many things. There's still a mystery around these categories. Culturally, technically, historically, they are spirits that have so much to offer to the people who enjoy the spirits. If you just walk in, I mean, if we are in Tequila 101, walking into the world of tequila is really endless. I mean, you know, I have news for you. I've been very involved in the tequila industry for over 3 decades. And I don't say this just to say it. Every time that I go and I, in front of people, of maestros or jimadores, and when I interact with groups like you, there is always so much to learn. So learning these differences, learning, the variety, the different flavors depending on the region where it's coming from, and depending how it's produced, like diffuser tequilas. There is so much to learn there, which I think is a fascinating aspect of the category. A diffuser, the only thing, and as Michael's mentioned, the diffuser is very interesting because when diffusers became popular in tequila production, liter-wise, the change, also the regulations allow producers to add artificial flavors into the tequilas. Why? Because the diffuser erased every single flavor that is created in the contact of the raw material with the terroir, with the climate, with the soil, with the years of evolving. So I think it defeats the purpose of drinking a spirit made of such a unique raw material. If you're gonna put in a diffuser and you're gonna erase everything and then you're gonna add artificially the flavors, you should drink flavored tequila, I mean vodka, a neutral spirit that it can go in any flavor that you want to order.
Well,
So,
and to clarify too, David, it's only up to 1%, and what can they use?
but that's more than enough to even trick the most. I remember we did a blind tasting in Guadalajara years ago with neutral spirit by a guy who represents this chemical company to produce artificial flavors. You can make a neutral spirit taste like an extra añejo tequila, and it is doable, chemically speaking. Scientifically speaking, they can do all these wonderful things. So 1% is more than enough to make it taste smooth, to make it taste like agave, to make it taste in a very pleasant way that can make familiar palates with the category. It can make a very pleasant experience that, inside these very fancy bottles, with a very fancy movie star from Hollywood, it creates this niche that is now, hurting a lot of people in Mexico and hurting the ecosystems in Mexico, and create such an impact that is not reversible. That's my concern. One of the reasons that I make a lot of emphasis on the use of this technology and the mixtos, and it's because at the end of the day, what we want to do is to preserve a category that is being in existence in this planet, that is linked to history that can go before Spaniards arrived to Mexico. It's an incredible story of survival. The colonial times when the Europeans arrived to Mexico, they not allow indigenous people to conduct their religions, celebrations with these spirits, with these beverages. They survive, the revolution times. It's been a spirit that is very resilient. And now we have marketing. Now we have these new ways to approach to the category that is also diluting the cultural and the beauty of these spirits.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm not drinking only water,
You just used two words, David, that made me realize we've been talking now for 40 minutes, and you just said extra añejo, and we've not even started down that path of what does it mean to age tequila. And I'm really curious about that, because my viewpoint is the aging of tequila in wood is it sort of does the same thing that these industrial processes do, which is to smooth out the flavor. And so for me, when I'm looking at tequilas, when I want to taste tequilas, I always go blanco. But I'm really curious what your thoughts are about that.
Hang on. Before we get to the aging, we got to catch up on a couple questions first. We've had some people waiting here.
Go for it.
David, you had mentioned Jimadores a few times, and we had one point of clarification from Elizabeth. Are those laborers specifically for the agaves, or is it a more general term? And does it mean a tequila-only maker? I'll let you answer that
The farmers who specialize on the on harvesting the agave, they know in the tequila industry as jimadores because the harvesting, the cutting the plants is called jima. Jima is a term that is used mainly in Jalisco and some regions around Jalisco. So when you see this, like the picture that we have behind you, Pat, is all those agaves. When it comes to time to harvest, you know, you're gonna shave those leaves. So that is called jima. So jimadores are the farmers who are involved mainly at the fields of agave. Yeah.
And then another question here, you know, with all this talk on mixtos, to be clear, a mixto is at least legally at least 51% Blue Weber agave, 49% other fermentable sugar sources. Can they use other types of agave, or is that only going to be cane sugar or corn or grains or things like that?
That's the most incredible thing about the mixtos. You can use corn syrup. You can use any crappy sweetener, but you're not allowed to use other agaves. It makes
you want to find out what they do with all the other agaves? Listen in on week 4 when we bring Pedro Jimenez from Mazante on the show.
Yeah.
And you know, an interesting thing that is this 51, 49% for mixtos. There is not a scientific analysis that you can prove that is that the percentages are respected by the producer.
Oh.
I also too, and this is not going to be necessarily like a popular statement, but just because I ran a bar like late 90s, early aughts, Cuervo was the largest selling tequila. I didn't have the best understanding of tequila. I ran a whiskey bar. And what I did find
bar in Nebraska also.
It was a wonderful whiskey bar in Nebraska. But what I did find is that a lot of times they are using things like corn syrup. And so there was a familiarity in the bottle that whiskey drinkers found this familiarity because it's a very similar kind of grain neutral spirit to what you would find blended into Scotch or a very low, maybe Canadian whiskey or like not a great bourbon, a really young bourbon. So to me, anything that brings someone into the category. So if you're coming to us as a whiskey drinker and you're trying to I want to fall in love with tequila. I really respect this. I understand this. It might not be the worst gateway. I hope you get through that gateway really quickly because it's not indicative of what agave tastes like. It's not indicative of the heritage of these products, but it does, but there's, you know, it's got its purpose.
It's the path that a lot of people, a number of people who are drinking the best tequila and the most artisanally produced tequila in the world now probably started with a brand that was readily available, mass produced and readily available would have been where a lot of people started. And it's kind of, you know, and the purpose of this is the education piece isn't necessarily to trash. It's that we're trying to really lead everybody to the discussion about the artisanal. So, well,
then we've established you're looking for 100% agave and you're looking for stuff that isn't made on with a diffuser. You know, a diffuser is one of several ways to extract fermentable sugars out of agave plants, right?
But I'm sorry, Pat, but I don't think is there any way on the label to tell whether it was diffuser made or not?
No, there's
not that I'm aware of.
There's no way.
But there are beautiful resources available like Tequila Matchmaker, and our friend Grover Sanchagrin and his wife just started their own certification. It's not like a government certification, but if you even just, you know, Google what a tequila's NOM, N-O-M is, you see an N-O-M on every bottle of tequila, and it'll be a 4-digit number that will tell you where that tequila, well, a little bit of gray area there too, but that's a 201 level conversation, but it'll tell you and what else is made there. But also Grover's List, they just added a non-diffuser additive free. So you can actually go out and look up some of your favorite tequilas, many from David, like the Siembra Bias that I'm drinking right now. If you like Fortaleza, G4, you can find those things and you can actually see, you know, a little bit of work on the little computer in our hands at the store shelf, and we can get it done.
That is one of the beauties of the times that we live in. There is a lot of information available. It used to be very difficult to obtain information about where your tequila was coming from. But, you know, yes, we have to be very cautious because within the denomination of origin, there is a lot of ways that producers who make tequila in diffuser can transport legally that tequila, that juice, to be bottled in a distillery that doesn't use diffuser, with the only purpose to have exactly, more savvy tequila consumers, that they make their homework and they figure out that it's no diffuser on XYZ distillery. Therefore, I can be secure. I can be sure that my tequila doesn't have diffuser. There is ways around that you can go with that. So
Don't do it. Don't do
it. Again, this is and one of the most beautiful things about these groups, because we are talking about it. Education, awareness is so important for the future of the category. For us to question producers, hey, what is your source of agave? How's your process? There is any other producers involved in your production of batch XYZ?
Oh, you're not going to be able to see this, are you? I'm trying to show David's
technical data. There we go.
All this technical data.
You need a green screen, honey. We got to get you a green screen.
I'm going to get a Melania dress, and then I'm going to be fine.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So we've established a few kind of basic production and fermentation things from here. But if a customer, we're talking back 101 level, if a customer comes into a store and is looking at, they've had a few tequilas, they've forgotten about a bad college experience with tequila, and they're questioning what their taste, and they're looking at things more, under a microscope, so to speak, with what they're drinking these days. The next step that they really need to look out for on a tequila label is generally going to be whether it's labeled Blanco, Reposado, Añejo, Extra Añejo. Who wants to tackle that one next? I'm breaking those.
Michael does, because Michael's selling it every day.
I might be the right person for this, or the worst person to ask.
That's why I ask.
So for me, this would actually harken back to something Lou said earlier, and I try to make it a habit never to agree with Lou, but I think that he was correct. For me, if you're going to drinking tequila, okay, the point of it, actually this picks up a couple of threads that we had. Like, the biggest compliment for many, many years, and this was the Misto era, and this is the 100% agave, which is not well made, and to now is the highest compliment you can give a tequila is it's smooth, right? That's the greatest thing you could ever say about it. That is not how I feel. To me, what I want to taste is the plant. I want to taste tradition. I want to taste the land. I want to taste the ingenuity of the Mexican people in the face of so much adversarial, incredible problems, as David pointed out earlier. I want to taste what they have created from this plant. Money, industrialism, all these things have gotten in the way. For me, when it comes to aging tequila, I am completely uninterested in anything that spent time in wood. At Esterio, I've got 180 distillates made from agave, whatever you want to call them. Tequila, mezcal, rexilla, whatever. I carry one reposado and one añejo, just because people have to have them. Fortaleza, that's it.
So David.
So to actually answer the question.
So David, can you please tell us the difference between Reposado, Añejo, the newest definition, Extra Añejo, if there is a distinction between Extra Añejo and Ultra Añejo? Just sort of lead us through, because and is that part of the gnome?
But it's interesting to also ask ourselves why we had to throw a tequila in a barrel. Remember, if this is a whiskey group of people, the base spirit of whiskey, it will be enhanced by the pairing of the wood, and lots of the complexity comes from that aging on the wood barrel, right? As I believe it was Tomás Estes or Carlos Camarena, make a great observation. It's like, in tequila or in mezcal or any agave spirit, the aging process is before you harvest the plant, the raw material. You age those flavors in the time where the raw material is developed. remember, you wait minimum of 5 years, up to 40 years to harvest an agave plant. So flavors are created there. So yes, I agree with Michael that you want to taste the raw material. You know, you're gonna taste one of the most complex, if not the most complex raw material used to obtain alcohol. And the only reason that we start to age tequila is because in Mexico, a very classist society, you know, back in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, to drink agave spirits was linked to the indigenous Mexico, to the poor Mexicans. So society, it kind of like discriminate against those spirits because the origin being an indigenous origin. So for many, many years, producers of tequila, they try to figure out how they can avoid or erase that conception of society in Mexico. So they came up with a brilliant idea to age their indigenous spirits, just like the European spirits are processed. So we brought to the tequila category whiskey barrels.
This, honestly, David, this is a real epiphany for me because I had never really thought about it. It was like the whiskey.
Oh my goodness!
It's like the whiskeyizing, cognac-izing of tequila.
If you go back to the reason why whiskey, because you said, if you go to the reason, really, whiskey aging, theoretically at least, part of the way that whiskey began to be aged was because they were storage and transportation vessels.
Exactly.
And the world, to move alcohol around, you needed a vessel to move things around. And it would have been clay, then potentially it would have been glass, but clay and glass are heavy and brittle. Wood turned out to be less weighty and more flexible, so it was more durable. You could drop a barrel and it didn't necessarily explode and lose everything. Then after a period of time, after they were putting it in these vessels made out of wood, they kind of discovered that it altered the character. In the case of brandies and whiskeys, it was decided that this actually contributed and really rounded out and made the character better. So there's some argument that brandy and whiskey are the aging of brandy and whiskey, at least partially started out merely as a byproduct of transportation and storage.
Exactly. And you know,
with tequila, I mean,
in tequila, that was the reason is because we want to identify culturally, you know, with these European beverages that in Mexico per capita were largely consumed. We consume more brandy, more whiskey, more cognac than agave spirits for generations in Mexico. So the big tequila industry is like, you know, we have to compete against these brown spirits. Well, let's throw our tequila into barrels that have been previously used with bourbon, whiskey, cognac, Armagnac. And that's how the Reposados and the Añejo, and very interesting, I grew up in Guadalajara, you know, for when some of my wealthy friends, when I go to their weddings, the families and the reunions, if they bring tequilas into the parties, it was only aged tequilas. Blanco tequilas, it was considered only for the very poor peasant, the guy who, you know, this is a classist society, and you know, it is just a fact. So the aging process, it became more and more sophisticated. You know, we start to categorize, you know, if we're gonna just sell it quickly, let's say this just rested, it's just a reposado. We need minimum of 2 months in contact with the wood and up to a year. And that's the category that you can put on the label and you can sell it as reposado, which was the most popular category sold in Mexico for many years. Why? Because you already went through that cleanser of society. We was already exposed into a whiskey barrel, you know, and now you can drink it. And then you put square in it, you know, or you put lime and salt and you shoot it. So, you know, but then the añejos, it was a little bit more complex. There was a little bit more for the people who wants to spend more money or waste more money. And it was a minimum of 1 year. And then there's about 10 years ago, the extra añejo category came, to distinguish the tequilas. There were 3 years, minimum of 3 years, with no limit on the aging process.
So is ultra an established category?
It's extra añejo, it is.
No, ultra. Now there's ultra.
No, it's the same. We have 5 so far. Remember, we have blancos, we have gold tequila,
Mixto?
or avocado. No mixto. No. In the mixtos and the 100%, there are 5 classes of tequila: blanco, joven or gold tequila, reposado, añejo, and extra añejo.
And my understanding is joven in tequila, it's different than mezcal, but joven in tequila means that it's been filtered? It's aged and filtered?
No, that's the cristalino, which is soon to be recognized as the 6th class of tequila. There's already lots of push on the industry to classify the cristalino,
Okay.
as the new class of tequila, which is
Filtered añejo.
It's either reposado, añejo, or extra añejo that is filtered, and just to sound cristalino sounds good, huh? And,
Thanks, Patron.
It sounds smooth, David. I think
Well,
yeah.
Thanks, the Beckmans. That was Maestro Dobel was really the first major commercial brand of a Cristalino, Maestro Dobel Diamante.
And you know where it's coming from, the cristalino?
J.P. Beckman.
But you know why inspired that cristalino? We go back to the all good spreadsheets, because thanks to a lot of people that is part of this panel, they've been doing such a great job educating consumers that more and more tequila consumers are shifting into the tequilas that are more worthy to drink, which is blanco tequilas. And the inventories of añejos, they turned extra añejos and very extra, they were not selling. So somebody came up with a great idea to filter that and create that cristalino so you can sell the it's just insane. You know?
It is insane.
One we didn't get to a definition on was joven, and Lou, you brought up that question too.
Joven, avocado, or gold. That's the 3 names for that class of tequila, which means there can be any tequila from the 5, but if you blend, like if you blend any of the extra añejos or reposados with blanco, it became a joven or avocado. And also it's a tequila that can be blanco, and you can add artificial color to add the golden color, gold tequila, and it's called gold tequila. It's just there we go. There is the tequila that it can be pretty much even more bastardized, and to make it look aged, but it's not aged, it's gold. Okay. And, if you notice, I mean, there is a denomination of origin, there is a product that you can do basically anything you want with it, in order to make more money. Yeah.
One of the things that we didn't touch on that is 101 level is how agave is pollinated. And to me, this is a massive part of the story. Lou and I spent a fun evening last fall at the Lincoln Park Zoo. And
that was so fun.
It was so fun. And we ran out of spirits to pour in about 5 minutes.
Because you were drinking so much.
I was wasted. We had hundreds and hundreds of people, and we were pouring a lot of spirits from David that he was very generous with. But David, why were we pouring from the bat exhibit?
Yeah, well, it's, if it wasn't for bats, we were not having this conversation. We will not having these categories. The agaves are plants that their metabolism is completely backwards. So all their activity is during nighttime. And they do that because a lot of these agaves, a lot of these plants, they develop in areas, they grow in areas, they are extremely dry, They're extremely hot. So through millions of years of evolution, they decide that they have better chances if they preserve liquid by shutting down during daytime and avoid the extreme weather of the daytime and wait until the cool nights of a desert climate or the cool climate of the evening. And the way they obtain their liquids so they can survive for years without one drop of rain, and remember, you don't need irrigation on agave plantations, is because for them having the metabolism backwards, they are very attempt, they are waking up, or before they go to sleep, they can obtain their water from the change of the drastic change of temperatures and the creation of moisture in the atmosphere. But there's very rapid changes of temperature. So if you go early in the morning into an agave plantation, no matter what time of the year, and if you observe the pencas, the leaves, that for a reason they have the angle that is, about 45, 65 degrees, that condensation is retained in the pencas and water is gonna drop into the heart of the piñas. And that's how they can obtain water and they survive for years with no rain. But also when it comes to the moment to reproduce themselves, remember, agaves, they only flower once in their lifetime. When the agaves complete the cycle, all their lives, they've been developed sugars. They've been developed, the absorbing from Mother Nature, and they create sugar content. They have they have to create enough nectar so they can attract pollinators, because they have only one chance on their lifetime. And the only thing we have here is that they are active only at nighttime. So who is going to be that pollinator? Bats.
Nocturnal animals, yeah.
The agaves, they strongly depend on nocturnal pollinators. There are couple pollinators that fly at nighttime, but the most efficient one is the bat. You can go to the, I have some pictures of bats pollinating, but also mulch. They are almost the size of the bats. With a tongue, they are a little bigger than their body. So they don't approach that much into the flowers. They don't carry that much pollen, and also they don't fly too far away from the agaves. Bats, to the contrary, the long-nosed bats, they have to get their face all the way inside the flower of the agave, and they completely cover themselves with pollen, and they have the capability to fly up to 80 miles per night.
Wow.
The areas of pollination of these incredible mammals are like no other pollinator at daytime or nighttime. So bats are being dependent of agaves, and agaves being dependent of bats in this agave corridor that happens to be all across Mexico. But due to the way that we decide to reproduce agaves on our tequila industry, having this weighted into the maturity of the plant, which means all the sugar concentration is ready to be shoot to the flower stalk that grows on the center of the agave. All that sugar is going to be used by the plant and develop that quiote, that flower stalk, that can be raised up to 20 feet high. So there is a lot of sugar that it goes through that flower stalk. And it's a lot of nectar that is going to be used there to attract a lot of pollinators. Mm-hmm. So that sugar, instead of being used to production of tequila or mezcal, it goes to feed pollinators. So what we do as an industry, we castrate the plants. We not allow that to happen. And, we don't want to use that plant to feed bats. And we've been doing that for over 100 years. So there is a lot of scientists that they know very well bats and agaves. They've been warning us for decades that we are asking for trouble if we not allow pollinators to do their job, which means the genetic strength of these plants. You know, all that knowledge that is transmitted through thousands of years, millions of years, that allows the plants to understand that if they react in some ways, they can defend themselves from their natural predators, or they can generate chemicals in their composition that they will not be able to be metabolized by insects, so they're gonna leave them alone. All this is being lost by over 100 years of not allowing the cross-pollinization to happen, because we only reproduce the agaves via offshoots. Remember in the beginning when we say that the Agave tequilana Weber is the most efficient plant of all the agaves on giving us babies, little babies. The problem with those little babies is they are clones of the mother. So it was not a cross-pollinization. So genetically speaking, those agaves of clones of clones of clones, they are nowadays only the result of 2 clones. So when a disease affects one plant, the entire plantation is vulnerable, is affected. Same thing happened to grapes, you know. We create that problem on grapes and we pay a very high price. So what we've been doing for the last 5 years is promoting among agave producers to allow a small percentage of their plants to develop this flower stalk and allow pollinators to carry, to exchange genetic information around the plants, generate seeds from these plants, and take care of those plants and start to be able to recuperate some of that genetic information that these magnificent plants needs in order to defend themselves. Otherwise,
I love it. So it's what you're looking at in Pat's background is the plant in the ground. You kind of see in Pat's far left something that's starting to go up to a quiote, and then now Brett's background and Lou's background are when they are actually allowed to go to flower, which means that they are not going to be used to make tequila or mezcal. All of that sugar production has gone into the flowers.
It will be a bitter, waxy plant at that point that is not going to taste good if we turn it into a beverage.
These are all the flowers that all
does what it needs to do.
bats are coming by pollinating.
And then the question, David, then, so if you allow, what is the percentage of plants? If you, 2 questions, how long do you have to let the plant mature before the quiote will spring? And 2, if you allow 10 plants to get to that age, how many of them will spring a quiote?
Yes. Well, the answer is very simple. You know, you probably don't even have to go by number of plants in order to obtain an enough seed bank. One very successful, very prolific mother, agave, it will give us about 5 to 7 offshoots, okay, that we can harvest those offshoots and replant it. And there are clones of clones of clones of clones. If we allow that same mother to develop the quiote and to give and to flower and give us seeds, that plant to give us only 7 offshoots is capable to give us up to 10,000 plants. I mean, seeds. So it's just, you know, it's how greedy the industry is. We don't want to, we waste 10,000 seeds in order
to
to gain
one plant.
2 years of use of the land. So, you know, one of the producers that we work with, Emilio Vieira, that produced Mezcal Don Mateo, he used, one of the agaves that he used is Agave Cupriata. Those agaves only reproduce via seeds, via cross-pollinization. What Emilio does, he selects the most healthy agaves on his plantation, and the Agave Cupriata has the capability to give us up to 80,000 seeds per plant. So if you select the best agaves in your plantation and you obtain 80,000 seeds from every healthy agave, you have enough agaves to cover the Mexican territory, you know. And the reason that the agave reproduce in the two different ways, we go back again to these very resilient plants. You know, they want to be sure that they survive. So the only reason they give us offshoots is just to secure another generation. But what they really want to develop is the seeds, allow those seeds to spread across, you know, by wind, and have a healthy babies. Very interesting methods of reproduction that these plants use, because we observe that plants, they go through a lot of stress during their lifetime. They have the tendency to give us more offshoots, like 10 offshoots. If they are in the optimal conditions, they give us less offshoots because they know they're gonna be able to give us 80,000, 50,000 seeds. Yeah. So again, it's just a matter of education, not just for the consumer, but the producers also. I remember when we first had the first meetings, Rodrigo Medellin, which is the co-chair on the Bat Friendly Project. Rodrigo Medellin is a bat expert, one of the most respected bat experts in the world. And, you know, we invite a couple tequila producers and agave producers to explain them about the Bat Friendly Project. One of the most important agave producers on the highlands region of the denomination of origin, he don't even know that the agaves are such an important part of the reproduction of the plants. That's the lack of education. And you have to remember, the agaves arrived to the highlands only in 1898, which is yesterday on tequila terms. They are agaves, they are not endemic from the highlands region, and they arrive in the form of offshoots. So all the agricultural practices around that they are in the tequila industry in the highlands region, it became from offshoots. There were farmers that they never know any other way to reproduce agave than the offshoots. So again, education, not just on consumer, but also on the producers.
And so on the other side in the seeds, so you can decide, the seeds don't have to spread on their own. You could, if you allowed them to be pollinated, you could still, as a farmer, harvest the seeds and then plant.
Exactly. You go to nurseries, you take care of your babies for a couple of years. When the agaves, they are now sufficient, you know, because agaves, one of the reasons that we get 80,000 seeds, for example, from a plant, is because the seeds are very vulnerable, you know. But when you have a nursery and you can take care of the agave, of the seeds, you know, you will fill lots of nurseries very rapidly. You know, Emilio Vieira, again, we're going back to Cupriata, his nursery is always full of babies because he has a lot of, every year he has a lot of seeds. Carlos Camarena from Tequila Ocho, he has a nursery that he has more than 200,000 seeds, you know. So some of the people to oppose, or they has a little bit more, less optimistic view of the reproduction via cross-pollination, they thought that the agaves, because it's been multiple generations without allowing them to cross-pollinate, they thought they're going to be sterile, the agave tequilana Weber. Well, guess what? Carlos Camarena has like 50,000 baby agaves already.
Awesome.
They as a result of cross-pollination.
You know, can I put a fine point on that? Because so one of the things that we do at Sacred is we do buy seedlings from this middle school in Zachila, Oaxaca, to give to agave seedlings, to give to mescaleros in Oaxaca. And the numbers that we've been told is you get something like a 98% germination rate for seeds that are brought into a nursery versus roughly a 5% germination rate for the seeds that are left in the wild.
Yeah. I mean, they're very precious source of food for a lot of insects.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of seeds land on the wrong place that they cannot germinate. So yes, that's why there is so many seeds per plant. But if you go to nursery, basically, you know, I mean, the percentage is extremely high. Yeah.
So just to make sure we've covered. So in the gnome, it just for the 101 piece. In the gnome, we have covered the plant material, and we have covered aging, and we have covered the ability within the rules to add additives and other alcohols. David, is there anything we've missed? Is there anything we've missed in the gnome, the plant, the aging, what additives can and can't be added? Is there anything we've missed?
I think we covered everything. I mean,
We covered extraction, we covered distillation.
but you know, we have the NOM is supervised by the Regulatory Council, you know, which is an agency. It's an independent agency.
Lou is losing his mind.
Yes,
You know,
Lou.
Also,
it feels to me.
this is Carlos's nursery.
There we go.
Visited in January. So that's a little tiny agave plants.
There agaves that came from seed. So that is a scientific break, you know, great news when we were able to see that those seeds, they were viable, you know, and there was a lot of babies came out of that bat-friendly project. Yeah. So I think we cover everything. You know, one of the things that is important, because a lot of people blame everything on the Regulatory Council of Tequila or the Regulatory Council of Mezcal. We have to understand that, you know, these agencies are only verifying and supervising that the regulations, that's where everything is focused. The regulations are created by multiple agencies to go to the Mexican government and say, listen, we want that this nom of tequila or mezcal or raicilla or sotol to be, this should be the way they should operate. These are the topics that are important for these expressions of agave to be commercialized, to be supervised, to be verified. So when we talk about to criticize the norms and to be picky about how these norms operate, a lot of people direct a lot of the attention to the Regulatory Council of Tequila and Mezcal, but we don't see big companies who are really the lobbyists that are behind these norms and create these, you know, very soft laws, easy for them to get into these gray areas where they can, you know, cheat basically the consumer. So I'm very optimistic in looking how the consumers are getting more and more savvy, you know, and this is why it's so valuable to have these conversations, that we bring points for spirits and for products that are so unique that if we just let it on the hands of big transnationals, obviously what they want to do is money, which is great, because in the process of making a lot of money, they're creating the awareness of the category, which is very good and very necessary. But I think it has to be that check and balance. It has to be that, okay, you know, yes, to you, I'm so happy to see tequila in Perth, Australia, one of the most remote parts of the country. I was sipping in Perth 5 years ago some of the best agave spirits that Mexico produce, and that's thanks to the big corporations. They create that awareness. But at what price? You know, so we have to have that check and balance. We have to have a lot of Bretts, a lot of Michaels, a lot of Pats, a lot of Moniques, a lot of Lou's in the industry to create that awareness and to make it.
One Lou. I mean, it's just one Lou. What are you getting at, Lou?
Oh my God. So we've got the high priest of cocktails with us. I won't drink cocktails unless they are made by Michael Rubel. And
I'm right there with you.
We're 20 minutes beyond where we're supposed to be. I know that. But I want like a 2-minute answer from Miguel Rubel. I want the 2-minute answer of, I've been drinking margaritas at TGI Fridays, and I'm interested in moving from that to neat tequila. How do I do it?
Can you eject him from the chat now that he said TGI Friday? Can he be ejected? No, Rubel knows. Rubel makes the best cocktails in the city. What do you do with tequila?
He also referred to me as a priest, which is actually the first time that's ever happened in any context whatsoever.
You are wearing black and white and look as priest-like as I've ever seen you.
Fair enough. All those years of Catholic school, maybe it's finally catching up to me, but I really doubt it.
No denim.
What are you talking about? No denim.
Okay, stop showing us your pants. Talk to us about cocktails with tequila in them. Let's start with the margarita, and how do you move to that from drinking a neat tequila?
Huh. All right. The first thing you do is you make your next margarita with a good tequila.
Yep.
Something. We didn't get to all the details today, but you want to look for something that's brick oven cooked, not just not diffuser. Let's get something brick oven cooked, whether it's Tahona crushed or whether it's crushed mechanically, what have you. Let's take Cascajuin, for instance. Cascajuin 40, they do a 48%, which they have at Benny's. It's one of the most popular tequilas at Esterio, and I use it in every tequila cocktail that I ever do. Is it smooth? I mean, I guess, I don't know. It's not really a question I ask myself. But what it does, it's a Baiti tequila. It comes from right around Tequila Arenal. And what it has is depths of flavor. It's vegetal, it's mineral, it tastes like the plant. It brings you to the land. If you start drinking your margaritas with something like this, then you're actually appreciating the spirit, right? The whole point of Esterio is to do cocktails that showcase unaged spirits from Latin America. And if you're going to drink a tequila cocktail at Esterio, you're going to taste the tequila, always. So you start with, say, a Cascajuin 48, you make your margarita with that, and then pour yourself just maybe half an ounce on the side. Drink your margarita, take a little sip of that. It echoes the earthy, vibrant flavors that you were getting inside your margarita. Go back to the cocktail, do that, and then for your next round, instead of having another margarita, grab yourself a beer out of the fridge, grab yourself a Pacifico or something, and then pour yourself an ounce of that tequila. And then go back and forth between that Cascajuin 48 and your Pacifico, and now you have your own cocktail. Boom, now you're discovering tequila.
That's beautiful, man.
Lou,
God
I think your
bless you.
question, though, kind of makes the assumption that the way to drink tequila is to drink tequila neat. And maybe for people like us, whose job it is to taste through all the different varietals of agave in mezcals and taste through all the different tequilas they can, that's one thing. But I think for most people, more people than not, though, it's going to be mixed with something. We had a question come through on Facebook, said, I generally mix it with orange juice. What's a good price I should be looking out for a tequila? And I would say that no matter how you enjoy it, especially if you're going to be mixing it, you can find a good 100% agave tequila, for under $35 generally, and certainly under $30. So we do have to keep that in mind. I don't want to gatekeep how people enjoy their tequila here.
Amen.
Hey, I make my living selling cocktails. I'm all for mixing tequila with things.
Yeah,
Michael,
I've
what are
had
you
some
doing
amazing
outside
cocktails
of-
at Michael's Bar made with fresh pressed juices that they make in-house. And it's pretty remarkable how a good tequila that highlights some tropical and fruity notes and rich honeyed notes and a bit of minerality really comes to life with just a fresh fruit juice. And simply
That's what I was
that,
gonna say,
maybe a little
Michael,
bit of sparkling water.
Seasonally, how do you handle that? So it's like, here's what's going on right now, but then what flavor are you going to go to for fall, and what flavor are you going to go to for winter for your tequila cocktails?
Well, and we do work in a very seasonal way. Right now, I'm still getting tunas, either from Zacatecas or Oaxaca, although that season is basically over. My cases are still
I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Known in the United States as prickly pear.
Oh, okay.
But
I like those.
the fruit that grows right on the edge of the cactuses, which in Mexico is just called tuna.
And those two regions that you mentioned, Michael, they are the best tunas in the entire country. I'm very impressed that you nail it down to the epicenter of the good tuna. Wow.
I haven't been to Zacatecas, but I will tell you the tunas, when I get them from there, they're so good.
Yeah.
So so vibrant.
And the Huasteca, Potosina, and all that region has the best tunas in Mexico. Yeah.
So Michael, what's winter? What's it like? It's not a margarita Paloma season. What's a winter tequila cocktail?
Well, actually, so everyone thinks grapefruit is summertime, but the very best grapefruit for me comes from Texas. And climate change has turned that around a little bit. It used to be kind of early November. Now I feel like it's getting later, but those great ruby reds. We serve Palomas year round. Paloma is like, if there's 3 cocktails that matter, Paloma to me is one of them. We serve it year round at the studio, but my favorite time is when we get the ruby reds in November and December, and then we take that Siempre Valles that you had. I take Siempre Valles, we juice fresh grapefruit, fresh lime. You don't need this at your home, but at the studio we put it in a centrifuge to clarify it. We add some sugar, some sea salt, and we carbonate all the ingredients, and then we put it on draft.
Wait, did you just say you have Paloma all year round?
Mm-hmm.
You yelled at me in mid-April when I ordered a Paloma. You yelled at me, Miguel.
I didn't yell.
You yelled.
It was during Corona, man. It was a pandemic.
Whatever.
Yeah, I was a little stressed out, okay?
That was a pandemic yell, Lou. Get over it.
But we also have winter citrus, so we go from Palomas, and then we get beautiful blood oranges from California in December, which I love to mix with tequila. But we only serve the blood orange drink when blood oranges are in season. We try and keep everything in season, and we have beautiful coming right now from Michigan.
And just a couple of things.
Surprise.
David wants to jump in real quick. There was a question asked. I'll get out of the way. Michael's Bar Asterio is at the corner of Milwaukee Avenue and Sacramento Avenue in the Logan Square neighborhood in Chicago. David.
I just want to make one very interesting observation that, and that's what I have a lot of respect for Michael. If you notice when he started to answer your question, Lou, Michael start with the fundamentals of a cocktail. The quality of the spirit. You have to have the foundation of your cocktail has to be worth it. And I think when it comes to agave spirits and the how diverse they are in flavors, it is one of the best tools for a bartender to work with. I mean, you have the diversity on flavors from the region is coming from, the conditions on the agave where it develops, the process that Michael also emphasized, how you're going to be able to preserve those flavors and bring it into my cocktail program. That's so important in agave spirits, how we're going to cook, how we're going to extract the juices, how we're going to distill. So, to have a cocktail made with agave spirits, you're embracing thousands of organoleptic elements into a cocktail. And I always say, a good cocktail begins with a good spirit. I mean, everything else is a little bit less complicated to obtain, like good fruit quality ingredients, but the spirit has to be a very, very good spirit. I don't buy when people come to our program in Philadelphia, say, give me a cocktail, but don't mix it with a good spirit, with a good tequila. Use the cheap tequila. Say, I'm going to ruin your cocktail. Drink a beer, or drink a vodka cocktail. So lots of respect, Michael, the way that approach to cocktails with agave.
Yeah, it should be no surprise that when you take a good tequila and combine it with whatever the seasonally fresh fruit and juice is, that you have an amazing cocktail. So, I mean, take that approach in building all your cocktails at home, whether you're using agave spirits or not, and you're going to drink better cocktails, period. So
better. When you say better, you mean better than TGI Fridays?
There's a time and place, I suppose.
You're out, Lou. You're off my Christmas list, Lou.
Plus the best.
Okay,
if you ask Monique the best possible drink you can get at a TGI Fridays, a Negroni anyway.
Wait, what did you say, Brett?
The best tequila, the best drink you can get at TGI Fridays is Negroni.
That was an Olive Garden, FYI, and it was great.
Is it bottomless
Olive
Negronis?
Garden Negroni?
Don't even, that's for another night, you guys. We've already been on
Yes.
90 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're interested in hearing more about cocktails, you should take a listen to the Binny's podcast sometime, Barrel to Bottle, co-hosted by yours truly. We recently did an all Negroni episode where we took aim at Stanley Tucci's viral, terrible Negroni video. But anyway, everybody else, thanks for joining us tonight. I know it's been a long one. This is going to be fun to continue this series throughout the month. Tomorrow, Brett and I will be back with Alex Chasko, the master distiller from Teeling Whiskey. We've got some exotic new hand-picked cask finishes, including my beloved Madeira cask that we're going to taste tomorrow night. And the panel will be back on Monday, where we're going to start talking about mezcal, and that's going to be a challenge to get through that in any reasonable amount of time.
I'm not going to get kicked off. Like I haven't
You're
derailed
not kicked
enough?
off yet.
Well,
And if you have
listen,
further questions, which we haven't done before, if you have further questions or need to get in contact with Lou or Michael or Monique or David, you can always email us at spirits@binnies.com. That will hit Pat and I and Joe,
and we
the
can
third
have the
member of the
questions
Whiskey
ready to go
Hotline.
for Monday,
Yep.
if you want. So, guys, thanks a lot. This has been so much fun. And
Thank you,
I'm
guys.
thirsty for a Paloma now, and it's dinner time, so that's going to work out in my favor, I think.
Abrazos a todos.
Great to
Hasta
David, my friend,
pronto.
good to see you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Bye, guys.
See you guys next time.
Take care.